Well, I'm joined now by Yuriy Sak, spokesperson for the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. Mr. Sak, thank you again for joining us here on the program. We're just seeing there in our piece President Zelensky saying that the international community needs to continue to help Ukraine with more weapons, and said that your country, needed at least $5 billion a month to sustain this conflict. Do you think that's likely to happen, that the international community will come forward with those things?
Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me. Now, we have seen already, for example, in terms of providing Ukraine with the military assistance in the form of heavy weapons, we have already seen a tectonic change in the attitude of our Western allies. And while at the beginning of this war, the willingness of the international partners was not forthcoming, after the meeting at Ramstein, and today, as you know, there is an online meeting of those same ministers of defense of over 40 countries. After that meeting, the change occurred, and Ukraine began receiving the heavy weaponry that we so badly require to be able to liberate our territory from the occupiers. As for the international financial assistance, we already see some important moves forward, and you have seen that the President of the US, Joe Biden, he signed into action the bill which supposes to provide Ukraine $40 billion in assistance. But of course, this needs to be a concerted effort of the international community as a whole. And this is exactly the message that our President Zelensky was trying to send.
So you're saying it shouldn't be a one-off. It should be something that is ongoing, because frankly, it's unclear how long this conflict will last.
Well, nobody can predict at the moment how long this conflict will last. But what we can say with certainty is that the sooner we will receive the required heavy weaponry, the sooner we will be able to bring the peace closer. And this is why we are continuing on a daily basis our diplomatic efforts and speaking to our international partners with a request to...
I mean, despite an increase in heavy weaponry and funds, we did hear President Zelensky say that Ukraine may be losing 50 to 100 lives a day in the Donbas region, referencing the military casualties. I mean, tell us a little bit more about that, and if you think it could actually be more than that.
The offensive of the Russian aggressors in the east of Ukraine, the large-scale offensive began over 5 weeks ago, right? After they were forced to retreat by the Ukrainian army from around Kyiv, from around Chernihiv. Now we have been able to push them back from around Kharkiv. So they are concentrating all their efforts and military power in the east. And this is why, of course, the battles in the east of Ukraine, in the Donetsk and Luhansk region, are particularly intense now. And of course, there are casualties. And this is another reason why we need long-range heavy artillery, long-range heavy weaponry, because this will allow Ukrainian army to advance and counterattack without such a death toll.
Yeah, I want to also ask you about a statement made by the leader of the Donetsk People's Republic, saying that they were going to put on trial members of the Azovstal battalion. Can you give us some more information about that? Do you know if it's just the leaders or all of the soldiers that they currently have in captivity?
We do not comment on the leaders of this terrorist grouping. What we can say with certainty is that the rescue operation, as a result of which Ukrainian heroes have been evacuated from the Azovstal steel plant, and they are now held in the temporarily occupied territory. The International Red Cross is heavily involved. The UN is very actively engaged, and we count on the continued engagement of these third parties, these international organizations. And we hope that their presence in this process will be a safeguard against any moves that will contradict the agreements that were reached at the outset.
But are you worried about the fate of these soldiers and the leaders that are there being held?
Look, we are worried about the fate of every Ukrainian soldier, whether he's on the front line or whether he is kept by our enemy. So from this perspective, of course, there's nothing else I can say. We are worried, and we will continue to do whatever we have to and whatever we can to ensure that these soldiers are returned back to Ukraine in due course.
Given the intensity of the bombardment in places like Mariupol, places like Volnovakha being completely destroyed and flattened, are you concerned that that is also the fate of the Donbass now?
You know, some of our top military as well as political officials have already said many times that the Luhansk and Donetsk region are now turning into the next Mariupol. And unfortunately, we are seeing that the level of devastation, the level of bombardment, the level of destruction of civilian infrastructure, the houses, you know, for example, yesterday, the Russians have shelled villages around Severodonetsk, around Lysychansk, and they're destroying houses of ordinary peaceful civilians. So this terror of tactics of terror continues. So they're fighting not just the Ukrainian army, they're fighting civilian population, terrorizing civilian population. And this is why the world should be alert. You know, we understand that Bucha was just the first incidence of these atrocities that the whole world had been able to see. But Bucha is not the only city, and Irpin, those cities around Kyiv, you know, they're not the only cities where such atrocities have occurred. And this is why action is required timely and without obstruction. And we need to get the weapons. We need to get the heavy weaponry to stop this madness, to stop these atrocities from being committed.
Mr. Yuriy Sak, thank you so much for joining us here on the programme.